Can you see my screen, everyone? Yes, Peter has a question. He's asking, will today's recording be sent to us still? The recordings will be shared. Yesterday's class was recorded and uploaded on our YouTube channel. You can find it there. It was uploaded immediately. Priska is saying I zoom. Is the zoom okay, Priska? So I hope everyone can see my screen, and we can start. So yesterday I got a request by one of the students that I repeat what I was teaching about referencing. And before I start today's class, I want to start there before we can proceed to transforming our data. Peter, yes, the recordings will be sent, so don't worry about that. And I hope you are in our WhatsApp group. That's where we are getting the official communication from. So on our data, I want us to click on the relative reference sheet so that we can begin. And I will start. So cells in Excel have a unique reference, which is always its location. And reference are used for formulas to do calculation. And then using the fill function, can be used to fill down or sidewards or upwards. That depends on you. So in Excel, we have two types of reference. We have the relative reference and we have the absolute reference. And I will start with the relative reference. So in Excel, references are always relative by default. What do I mean by saying that? It means that the reference don't have a dollar sign. And the relative references makes our cells free. So we can fill downwards, sidewards, or in any preference that we want. So let's begin here on our data on our screen. And I want to sum the poke ball and the great ball. And as I said yesterday, when we are beginning our formula, we start with an is equal signs. And since we want to sum, just write sum there. Click on that. We want to sum the poke ball. Insert the addition sign and want to sum it with the great ball. And make sure we close the parenthesis and hit enter. So when we drag our formula down, it fills, and that is because our cells reference is relative. In addition, with the summing down or dragging our formula, we can drag it to the side, and I will demonstrate. We'll drag it this way up to row I, and we can fill it sideways. So from there we can do it downwards and it still fills. We can do that in the next column and it still fills. So that's all about our relative reference. If you have a question, please ask before we continue to the absolute reference. You can just raise your hand and unmute your microphone if you have a question. So since we don't have a question, we can continue with our absolute reference. So on our absolute reference sheet, we can continue. So what do we mean when we say we are absolutely referencing our cell? It means we are locking the reference, and we are locking it through using a dollar sign. In our data here, we want to calculate the costs of the poke ball and the great ball. And to do this, we'll add an is equal signs here at the costs. Click on the poke ball, multiply it by the price down here, and we hit enter. When we try to drag our formula down, we see zeros. Why is this? This is because we have not locked our reference here, our price reference here. And to do this, we add dollar signs to the values in B11. And to do that, we said we click on A4 to add the dollar signs to show that we are referencing that particular cell. Then we hit enter and we populate our formula downwards and our formula updates. And this is because we have absolute referenced our price on this cell here. So that's all about absolute reference. Is there a question? If you have a question, unmute your microphone and ask before I introduce a concept. Yes, George. So I will return back. I'll hit Ctrl Z to undo what I've done. Let me just start from the beginning. I want to calculate the cost of the poke ball, and to do that I will multiply the poke ball with the price. So I'll type in our formula here, and I'll start with is equals. Click on the poke ball, multiply it with our price here on cell B11 and hit enter, and we get the value. If we try to drag down the formula, we get zeros. This is because we have not absolute referenced the price here at B11. And to do that, I'll add dollar sign to that cell B11. I'll just hit on F11 on my keyboard to include those dollar signs. Then I'll hit enter and then drag my formula down so that it can update. And the values have shown up thanks to absolute referencing. Is that clear, George? George, is that clear? George? George, you can ask your question before we can proceed to another concept. So let me continue so that you can save a little bit on time, so that you can start with yes, George, ask your question. You can unmute your microphone and ask. Oh, you are good. Okay, so I want everyone to click on the mixed reference sheet so that we can meet another set of data here, so that I can be able to explain what mixed reference is. And that was the question I was asked yesterday. So Alvin is asking, which key did you press to show the dollar sign? I clicked on F4. the button F4 on your keyboard. That will enable you to add the dollar signs. Is that clear, Alvin? Yeah, that's clear. So let's go to mixed referencing. And mixed referencing is a type of absolute reference in which either the column is made constant or the row is made constant. And just like we have seen on the absolute reference, when we are doing mixed reference, we still use the dollar sign in front of the row or the column. And I will demonstrate by summing data 1 with the data 2. So I'll add the sum function. I will sum A, data A, to data 2. I will close my brackets and hit enter. So 10 plus 23 is of course 33. That worked. And if I try to populate that formula down, it doesn't work. Why is this? It's because I've not mixed reference our formula. And to do this, I will add a mixed reference to our cell here, our A2. So I'll add a dollar sign and say OK and update my formula. And you see it has updated to 22. So when we are locking our columns or rows, that is what we call mixed reference. And in our example here, I have locked my row 2, my row A2. Is that clear? Is there a question? You can unmute your microphone and ask, or type in a question on the messages. Yes. Okay, I will repeat. I will just undo what I have here on my cell. So in this data, I want to sum data 1 to data 2. I will insert an is equal sign, hit on this row and add it to data 2. And I hit is equals. And in this data, I want to sum data 1 here, cell A2, to data B in cell B2. And I also want to add A2 to our data here in B3. So when I drag our formula down, the values in our row here 3, it is just 12, but I didn't want that result. I wanted 22. To do that, I have to lock this cell here, and to lock it, I will lock the row, and I'll add a dollar sign between A and 2, meaning that I'm locking the row 2. Hope everyone is doing that. And I'll hit enter and drag my formula down, and I receive my desired result, which is 22. And when I click on this cell here, you see I'm adding A2 to B3, and I locked our row here, our row 2. Is that clear? The one who asked the question, is that clear? Pardon? We can continue. So yeah, in absolute referencing, we can do relative, where we are locking either the column or the row to achieve our desired result. Is there anyone with a question? Ask your question.
Getting the
I can't hear you properly.
done with the stuff.
I think there's something wrong with your connection. I can't hear you well.
I'm getting I do this.
When you do you cannot get the result.
Yes, I'm getting the I'm getting.
Make sure you have put your $ between A and 2. Don't hit on F4, just place it manually as I have done. When you hit F4, it will put a $ before A and after A. And in our situation, we want to put a $ between A and 2. Can you please do that?
Yes, I have done that. It's okay.
It's okay.
Yes.
Any further question before we can start today's lesson on data transformation?
Daniel,
Yes, ask your question.
related of course, but with my drop-down is not oh,
You're not clear. Repeat your question.
You getting me? Dan? Hello.
Hello, I'm not getting you clearly.
Are you getting me?
Continue.
My version of Bell is the one that has a problem. I try to drop to use I can set the Excel so that it can bring that drop down.
Which drop down? Dragging the formula. Can you please type your question so that I can get you clearly? Your voice is breaking a little bit. Or you can just repeat the question. You can type your question so that I can see it. At the meantime, let's continue with today's lesson. And everybody should turn to the transform sheet so that we can start. Have you all done that? So I'll assume we're all there. So today we look at a few fundamental ways to transform our data in Excel. And basically the goal of transforming data is to ensure that our data is in a form that is ready for analysis. That is, it is in proper shape and free from errors. And we'll start by converting text into columns. And the first type of data transformation we'll look at is to transform the text to column and using the text to column feature in Excel. So this is a handy feature to be aware of when we are importing data in Excel. And using the wizard type functionality, it can allow us to easily convert a single column data into multiple columns. And to do this, we are going to use the reference column. There is data here, and we want to separate this data into various columns. So let's start. We'll start by highlighting our data, and at our data tab, there's a text to column button here. So I'm going to click on it, and there's a wizard that pops up. So I hope everyone is following, and I don't want to leave anyone behind. So if you wanted to separate our reference column into three different columns, we can use the text to column to achieve this.
Excuse me, Daniel.
Yes, it's a question.
I can. Okay, so umefinya data, umefinya connect, tu umefinya window kwa ulipress connect. Jaona.
Oh, sawa. So when we select our data, we go to the data tab here, and to our right there's a data tool, and next to it there's a text to column. You can just see my cursor selecting here the text to column. Are we together? Have you seen the text to column?
Yeah.
Yes, please click on it. And when you click on it, there's a wizard that pops up, and it asks us about our data. Is it delimited or is it fixed width? And when a data is delimited, it means it has characters such as commas, tabs, and in our situation here, dashes that separates the field. So our data is delimited. Make sure you have clicked on the delimited button there and say next. So everyone should click next, and when we have clicked next, we come across other things here, and we are being asked what our delimiter is. Is it a tab, a semicolon, comma, or a space? And since our data is separated by dashes and is not the option of dashes is not here, we click on others. Once you have clicked on others, next to it we can type a dash right there. Are we together? Is everyone following? I assume yes. So down here we have our data preview, and you can see our reference is divided into 3 columns, and we say next. So we are in our final step, and here we are being asked about our data. So I want everybody to look here at the data review. Our first data type is general, and you can change it to text or date, or if you don't want to include it or you want to skip it, you can click on skip. And since our first column here on our data preview is the same as our product column, I want everyone to skip it. So click on do not import column, skip. Has everyone done that? And under destination, we want to know where we can place our 2 columns. So click on that, and we want to place our 2 columns here, and it updates, and we finish, and our text data has been transformed to columns. Are we on the same page, everyone? Yes, Emmanuel, ask a question. Emmanuel, you can unmute and ask a question. George, you can unmute and ask. George, I'm waiting for your question.
Yes, I'm asking about definition.
The definition.
Destination.
So let me go back. And I'll just start again. I will highlight my data, go to the data tab and go to text to columns. So our data is delimited. I'll say next. And since our text are separated using dashes, I'll include a dash and say next. So your question was about destination. So there's an arrow here, click on it, and this will give you a room where to place our separated columns, and I will hit here. So are we together, George? Have you done that?
Yes.
So after doing that, you can hit on the downward arrow and just finish the process. And our data, our text data separates to different columns. Are we together, George? Have you done it? So once we have separated our text to columns, we can give them names. And the first column, I can say, is a store reference, store ref. And our next column is a reference code. And hit enter. Are we together, everybody? If you have a question, just raise your hand and unmute your... Yes, Jones? Ask your question. The rest?
Oh, Daniel, mine are separated to 3. The one why? So it's separated to 3 columns.
Yes, it has separated to 3 columns because the first column we did not hit skip. There's no problem. The reason why I skipped that column is because it's a replication of a product column here. But if you forgot to do that, there's no problem. You're still being able to transform a text to columns. So as we have gone through this example, we have seen how the wizard makes it simple to interpret data into one column and different options to use to format our data in our Excel workbook. So next, we want to look at how to remove duplicates in our data. And I will first demonstrate using our product data here. As you can observe, we have duplicates. Number 1 is repeated, number 2 is repeated, and also number 3, number 5 is repeated. So to remove those duplicates, again under our data tab, to our data tools group, there's a remove duplicates. Wisdom, ask your question.
Okay, after the text to columns, when I reach to the destination, it's just by after the cell that I want it to be separated to. When I drag it down, it's not separated.
No, you are not dragging down, and I'll demonstrate. I'll just go back. I will just go back again. We highlight our data Under the data tab, we go to text to columns. Our data is delimited, so make sure the delimited option is clicked on, and I say next. So we have our text is separated by dashes. I say others and input a dash. Say next, and I want to skip this first column. I say don't import column, skip, and I say. So for our destination, here you have asked your question. I'll hit on this row here, this arrow that's pointing up, and click on where I want our 3 columns, or rather our 2 columns to appear, and I'll hit on this cell here. So I don't want you to drag it. I want you to press this arrow that points down and go and say finish, and we have our data. Is that clear? Is that clear, Wisdom? Ask your question. Is there a question? So let's continue to remove duplicates. If there is no question. So we wanted to remove duplicates on our product column here and return distinct values. And to remove duplicates, I want everyone to hit on their data tab, and then we move to our data tools group, and there is an option here for removing duplicates. I'll place my cursor there so that all can see. So after that, hit on that, and there's a pop-up that comes, and I'll just say continue the current section because I want to remove duplicates on the product column alone, and hit remove duplicates and say okay. And there's a pop-up that says 9 duplicate values found and removed, and hence we are remain with 5 unique values, and I say okay. Are we together? If you have a question, you can raise your hand, or if you have encountered a difficulty, you can ask. Is there a question? Yes, I can see Stella, you're asking a question. Please ask.
Kindly repeat. Nimepotea kiasi.
Umepotea?
Please.
Okay. So I'll click on undo, Control Z to undo your data, and I'll highlight our data here. On our data tab, click on our data tab. On our data tools group, there's an option here for removing duplicates. So Stella will hit on that, and since I want only to remove duplicates on our product column, I'll say continue with our current selection and say remove duplicates. See, we are removing duplicates in our product column, and say okay. And there's a pop-up says 9 duplicate values found and removed, and hence we are remained with 5 unique values, and I say okay, and that's that. Are we together, Stella?
Yes.
So anyone else with a question? So again, I will undo that data, and I'll highlight this whole data here. I want now to remove duplicates in our whole data. and through the same process, I'll hit on the data tab, go to remove duplicates, I'll hit on that, and now you have seen all our columns are selected: the product column, the product name, the store, the date, the reference, all have been selected, and I'll say okay. So 4 duplicate values found and removed, hence we have remained with the 10 unique values, and say okay. And now we have been able to remove duplicates in the whole data set, not just the product column. So are we together? Is there another question? So raise your hand if you have a question. So a shortcut for undoing our data, you just press Control Z, Control plus Z, and you will be undoing your data. Or you can click on this button here to just go back. So are we together? Has everybody done that? If you have done that, just type yes on the messages so that we can continue. So George, are we together? Eric? Yes, ask your question. Priska, you have been quiet. Are you okay? Alvin, you have been quiet. Are you following through? So yes, I'm receiving some messages that you are together. So it is important to keep in mind that duplicate values are not always bad or a mistake or a sign of dirty data. So it is crucial to understand our data, where it comes from, and if it is appropriate to remove duplicates or leave it as it is. So we move on to our next sheet. So everyone should do that so that I can explain some string function here. So I hope everyone has done that. We have moved on to the next sheet. So dataset often have columns that contain text values or strings. So under string, what I mean by a string is a collection of characters. So for example here, a hammer is a string, a ladder is a string. So basically this product name column here consists of a string. Same to this one here and this reference. So it is important to us to be comfortable. Is there a question? Yes, please mute your mic if you're not asking a question to prevent interruptions. So it is important for us to be comfortable working with strings, this type of data type. And let's continue with our data here to review some popular functions in Excel for working with text values. And to begin with, I will start by using the concat function. And the concat function allows us to combine multiple values into one cell. So a while ago, in our previous example, we separated values with the text to column feature, and using the concat function, we can pull them back together. So are we together up to there? Are we together? So on our column here H, I want us to use our concat function to join various columns. And again, when you are typing a function, we start by is equals. And I will say concat, click on it, and I want to join the store reference, comma, and the reference code, and I will close the parenthesis, hit enter, and I have been able to join those two columns, and I will drag down the formula. Is there a question up to that point? Raise your hand if you are stuck. Raise your hand if you are stuck. So when typing formulas or functions, make sure you have started it with an is equal sign. There's a hands that have been raised. Unmute your mic and ask your question. You can unmute your mic. So I can see Stella, you are one of them. You can unmute your mic and ask your question. Pardon? You are not clear. Please repeat your question.
You have used is equals concat.
Your voice is breaking. I cannot quite get the question well. Are you having some difficulty using the function, the concat, so that I can repeat?
No, not any difficulty. I'm asking if it's the same. Concat and concatenate.
It's
Is
same.
Yes, it is. It is the same.
same?
Concat is just
Thank you.
is the short form for concatenate. There was another question. There were other hands that were raised.
Yes.
There's noise. Yes, ask your question.
I was asking,
Yes.
is there any other way we can copy the formula apart from how? Must you can be dealing with data, say like 5,000. Dragging takes of time. Other way, maybe the phone the
You are breaking. I don't know if I got your question well. Are you asking if we can?
just
the plus, yes, you double tap the left button. So double down. So you just place double tap and then auto populate.
Thank you.
So George is asking I repeat on the concat. I'll just undo my data here so that I can repeat. So to begin a function, you begin with a equal sign and just say concat, and we want to join the reference column and the reference code here. So I want to join those two columns. I'll hit on the store reference, put a comma, hit on the reference code, close my parenthesis, and hit enter. And I have joined those two columns. And I'll drag down my function and it populates downwards. So is that clear? I will assume so, and I'll continue. So if we wanted to add the delimiter type in this formula, we can still add it, and to do that I'll still type the concat, open parenthesis. I want to concat this store reference, I'll put a comma, and I want to add a delimiter, so I'll open my quotation marks here and I'll add a dash delimiter, place a comma, and then we want to join it with the reference code, and I'll close my bracket and hit enter. And we have been able to include a delimiter to our function. So we drag it down and it populates. So are we together? So I will still continue concatenating so that the concept can stick. So I'll type concat again here. And now I want to concat our product column, add a delimiter, join it with our store column here, add another delimiter, and join it with our reference code here. So let's start. I'll hit on that, place a column, open our quotation marks, add the dash delimiter, hit place a comma, highlight the store reference column, another comma, open the quotation marks, add another delimiter, add a comma, and finally join with the reference code column. Close our formula and hit enter. And we have joined those three columns and we have placed a delimiter. And I will drag down the formula. So there is a question here by Eugene. You want to know how we have added the delimiter. Just undo, just show you. When you have added our is equal sign and said concat, we hit on our product, put a comma, open the quotation marks and add a dash. That is our delimiter. Press another comma there. We want to join the store reference column, place a comma, and we want to add another delimiter. I open my quotation marks, add a dash, which is our delimiter, add a comma, and include our last column, which is the reference code, and close the brackets and hit enter. And we have joined our rows and placed the delimiters in between those rows. So is there a question up to there? Eugene, have you understood? You can comment on the messages there. So yes, he has gotten it. So another common task in data cleaning is removing white spaces around values. And going back here in our reference column, we have trailing and preceding spaces in our column. So column 3 has a space, row 3 has a space, row 7 has a space. And to remove these spaces, we'll use the trim function. The trim function helps us to remove spaces in our data. So to use it, press is equal sign and input trim. And we want to trim this reference column. I hit on the column, close the parenthesis, and say enter. I will drag the formula down and now we have been able to remove the spaces in the data in our column. Is there a question? Am I moving too fast? Is everyone doing it?
That kindly.
Pardon? You want me to repeat? I'll repeat. I will undo. So the trim function helps us to remove trailing spaces in our data, and in our reference column here we can see we have spaces, especially in row 3 there's a space here. In row 9 there's a space, as you can observe. To remove those spaces we'll use our trim function. I'll press is equals, write our trim function, and I want to remove spaces in this column. Close our function and say okay. Drag our function, and we have been able to remove the spaces. As you can observe, you can compare this column here and this here. We have removed the spaces in that reference column. Is that clear? Is that clear? The one who had asked the question. So thank you. So let's continue. Another cleaning task we may face in replacing values, either to remove them from our data or update them. To do that, we can use the substitute function, and I will demonstrate. Again, I'll place is equal sign and input substitute, and we want to use our trim column here, and we want to substitute the dashes with the semicolon. To do this, I'll open the quotation marks, place a dash, and we want to substitute those dashes with the semicolons. I'll open those quotation marks and place a semicolon and close our formula. Then hit enter, and now we have been able to replace the dash delimiter with a semicolon delimiter, and we can populate our formula down so that it can take effect the rest of our data. So is that clear? If you have a question, you can raise your hand. I hope everyone is following. So Alvin is saying pardon. Yes, ask your question. Unmute and ask your question.
Okay, my question is, when you are typing the formula, the formula last is in, should I say block parentheses? How do you use it?
Can you please repeat your question?
Okay, when you are typing the formula, there's usually the first 3 arguments for the whole so formation square parentheses. So I was asking,
you are not clear. You are disappearing. I cannot hear.
Okay, sorry. My question. What is that?
Is everyone else hearing his question? Because I cannot get it clearly. Is it because of your connection?
question is, I hope you can get me clear now.
Mm-hmm. Can you please repeat your question? And those who are raising their hands, you can still ask your question. Is there a question? So Alvo is requesting for me to repeat the substitute method, and I will do just that. To use the substitute, we place the equal sign and just write substitute, and it comes up. So in the substitute, there are three arguments that we should put. The text, we'll put our column here, put a comma, and we want to substitute our dashes delimiter with a semicolon, and to put
I
our
think there's an
dash.
issue with your gadget, Daniel, because for me, I've been getting
The question.
questions on my end. So you may want to check and if there's an issue with your.
Okay. So can everyone hear me clearly? So as I was saying, the substitute. Using the substitute, we can input three arguments: the text, the old text, and the new text. And we want to replace the text, the dash delimiter, in our data here, and we want to replace it with a semicolon. So to do that, I will input some quotation marks there and put our dash, and we want to replace it with semicolon, and I will close my formula and hit enter. And now we have been able to replace our dash delimiter with our semicolon. So are we okay there? Yes, George, you are raising your hand. You can ask your question. George, you can ask your question. So since there is no question, let's continue. So an instance where the substitute can be helpful is by substituting the text. So you know the text, the strings value, and I will demonstrate it in the next column here using the sub. I will demonstrate it here in the sub column, and I will just input the substitute function again. And now in this example, I want to substitute the nail with the box of nails here in our row, in our product name column. So I want to substitute the nail with the box of nails. Close the formula and hit enter, and I will drag down the function, and as you can see, the instances where we had a nail, it is substituted with box of nails. Are we together up to there? Jones, you have a question? Ask, please.
No, I'm okay.
Okay, that's fine. So I hope everyone has done that. We have substituted our nails with a box of nails just to demonstrate the function, the substitute function. So let's continue. So a function that we can use for exploratory analysis, data quality analysis, and use with other text functions, as you can see in a moment, is the len function. And the len function returns the number of characters or length of a string. And I'll demonstrate here on our len column. You can put an is equal sign there and say len, open parenthesis, and we want to know the length of this string here. Say b2 and close and hit enter. And the word hammer, the number of strings in the word hammer is 6, and you can populate it down. So is there a question on using the len function? So the len function basically returns the number of characters in a string, and as we have seen here, the hammer has 6 number of characters, screwdriver has 11, drill has 5, and you have been able to do that thanks to our len function. Is that clear? Is there a question? If you don't have a question, we can continue. So we have a set of functions that you can use to return a subset of characters from a string, and we can use the left, right, and the mid function. And I will demonstrate how to use the left function. Again, when you are using a function, make sure you type an is equal sign, and you want to return the left characters in our trim column here, and I'll press on that and I'll close, and it returns number 1. I'll drag the formula down and it populates, and as you can see, we have returned the left characters from our trim column here. So 1 was the left character, we have returned it. 1 again on our row 3, we have returned it, and that is thanks to our left function. Is there a question? Is there a question? Joseph, you have been quiet. Do you have a question?
I'm following.
Okay, are you following well? If you have a question, please ask. Is there a question?
Pardon the left thing. After the len, the left.
Yes, the left function. And I'll undo. So the left function basically allows us to return the characters that are to the left of our data here, and we will use the trim function. We want to return the characters to the extreme left, the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, and the 5. And to achieve that, we will use the left function. So I'll type in the left and click on this cell right here, and just close the parenthesis, hit enter, and we have returned the value to the extreme left of our data here. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yes. So next we'll use our right function to extract the the characters to our extreme right in our trim column here. We want to return JFY, which is in our extreme right, and to do that we'll use the right function. And to do it, we'll click on cell K2, and to use this right function, we'll use it together with the len function, so that you can count the number of characters that belong on this cell. Close that, and now we have to subtract the number of characters that are before the extreme right values that we want to extract, and I'll count. So there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'll subtract 5 and close the parenthesis, and it has returned JFY, and I'll drag down the formula and it returns all the values respectively. So is there a question? So I'll pause for a second so that you can do it, and if you have not gotten it, you can ask a question. You can unmute your mic and ask a question. So anyone with a question? So Stella is saying I repeat, and I'll repeat. So we're using the right function, and we want to return, we want to use the trim column. So I'll hit on this cell, and since we want to return the extreme right, the characters to extreme right, this is J, F, and Y, I'll use the len function. I'll use the len function to calculate the number of characters that we have. Then I will subtract the number of characters that precedes our most right characters, and I will count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'll subtract 5 and close the parenthesis and hit enter, and we have extracted our most right characters in our trim column. So Stella, are you together? You can unmute your mic if you have a question. Stella, are you together?
Yes, we are together.
So anyone with a question about the right function? You can just unmute your mic and ask a question. So next we'll use the mid function to extract the middle characters in our trim column, and the middle characters in our trim columns is this AX, FY, BZ respectively, and we'll achieve that using the mid function. So I'll type the mid function, and the mid function has 3 inputs: the text, the starting number, and the number of characters to return, or rather the number of characters that our middle word has. So I'll click on cell A2, K2, and the starting character, we will count it, say 1, 2, and our starting character, which is A, is in number 3, say comma, and we'll count how many characters that does our mid function have, and AX has only 2 characters, and I'll type 2, and I'll make sure to close the parenthesis and hit enter, and that returns our characters in the middle, which is AX, and I'll populate the formula downwards to extract the other middle characters. Are we together? So Joseph, are we together? If you have a question, please unmute your mic. Alvin, are you following up? Priska has been too quiet. Are you following up?
Add on kindly.
So I'll repeat once again. I'll type the mid function, and I want to extract the mid characters in our trim column here. I'll type column K2, and we want to know the first character of our middle character, at which position it is, and I'll start to count. So 1, 2, 3. So character A is number 3. So I'll put number 3. And the characters that we want to extract are only 2. AX is only 2, and I'll say 2. And I'll make sure to close the formula and hit enter and drag the function downwards to extract the middle characters. Have you done that? Is that clear? If you have a question, please ask. If you have a question, please ask before we can proceed to the next concept that we have. So the silence means that everything is okay. And next we want to look at VLOOKUP, how to look up data using VLOOKUP. So if there is no question, let's click on our next sheet here, the VLOOKUP. So are we on the same page, everyone? I hope so. And I will start. So the VLOOKUP function allows us to add additional data to our data set, retrieving matching values from one data set to another. And we'll demonstrate that using an example. So our main data here, this is our source table here, and the data next to it is the lookup table. And on our lookup table, we can see our data is arranged into columns. We have columns. So A, B, C is in the store column. We have the district column and the region column. And we will start using the VLOOKUP on our district column here. So I want everyone to type an equal sign and type VLOOKUP. Type VLOOKUP. And the VLOOKUP has 4 parameters for the function. And the first parameter is the lookup value. And this is the value that we want to look up from our source table. So in our example, our lookup value, I want the store, and I'll click on the store. Add a comma. I hope you are together up to there. So our next parameter is the table array. And this is where we want to look up this value. And for us, this is the entire lookup table. We will highlight this lookup table here. All values except the headers. Make sure you have not selected the headers. Next, a comma. The next parameter is the column index. And the column index, this is the column from which our lookup table we want to return from our source table. And this is the column index, and it is denoted by numbers. So here on our lookup table, the first column index here, the lookup store, the store lookup is index 1, the district is index 2, the region is index 3. And since we want to return the district is at index 2. So I'll type 2. Place a comma. Are we together up to there? If you have a question, please. If you have a question, and unmute your mic so that you can continue. And our final parameter is the range lookup, or in other words, what do we want to return, an approximate value or an exact match in our source table. And for our example, we want to return, and for example, I want us to return an exact match, which is denoted by false value. So I'll click on false and make sure we have closed our formula. So is there a question up to there? Is there a question? You can please unmute your mic and ask a question. So I'll hit enter.
Why use false?
Because I want to return an exact match. If I wanted to say true, true means an approximate value. Are you together? So true here, you see, is an approximate match, and false is an exact match. Are we together?
Okay.
Yes, so please click on false so that we can return exact match. Is there another question before we continue? Another question, please. So and now we have our corresponding district here, district D1. So where the store is A, the district is D1, and you can confirm it in our lookup table next to our source table, where our store lookup is A, our district is D1. So before we drag our formula down, we have to remember to anchor our references to the lookup table. So here we will apply the concept that we learned yesterday and earlier when we started our class. We have to absolute reference our table array, and to do that, press F4 to add those dollar signs, and I'll also add a dollar sign here before we click on our formula. So are we together? Are we together?
You are breaking.
So as I was saying, before we drag our formula down, we have to remember to anchor our reference. And to anchor our reference, we have to absolute reference our table array. We have to include those dollar signs. So between I and 3, include the dollar sign, and between K and 7, include the dollar sign. Then press enter. Are we together up to there? Are we together up to there? So I'll just delete our whole VLOOKUP and I repeat, since that I was too fast. So I'll type in our VLOOKUP, and as I was saying, the VLOOKUP has 4 parameters. The lookup value, and this lookup value is what we want to return from our source table. And in our example, I want to return the store. So click on the store and then type a comma. The next parameter is the table array. And this is where we want to look up this value. We have our lookup table here. We have to highlight it. We have to highlight it and make sure you have not highlighted the column headers. Press comma. The next parameter is the column index, and this is the column which column from our lookup table we want to return to our source table. And as I have said, our column index starts from 1. So the first column here in our lookup table is 1, our district is 2, and our region is 3. And since we want to return the districts, our column index is 2. We do that. So the final parameter is the range lookup, or in other words, do we want to return an approximate or an exact match? And we want to return an exact match, so we hit false, and we close our formula and hit enter, and it returns D1. So as I was saying, before we drag down our formula, are we okay? Is there a question up to there? Please unmute your microphone and ask. Those who are asking on the chat, please unmute your microphone and ask a question. So before we drag down our formula, we have to remember to anchor our reference to the lookup table. And yesterday and today we discussed about absolute reference and the relative reference and the mixed reference. In our case here, we have to absolute reference the table array. And to remind you, press F4 in your keyboard to return the $sign. And you can do that here between K and 7 and insert those $sign. And then hit enter. And now we can drag our formula. We can drag our formula down, and we have received our values. Is there a question? Joseph, are we together? Alvin, are we together? Are we together? If you have a question, please ask. Unmute your microphone and ask.
Why is it returning hash and not applicable?
Thank you. That was the question that I was expecting. It has returned this NA error because you see this store F here. It is not in our lookup table, so it returns a not available error. It is called an NA error. Okay, is that clear, Joseph?
Fine.
Yes, it will always return an error if it does not find an exact match on our lookup table. We want to do the same thing here on our region. Is there another question? Yes, please ask your question. So Ronnie is asking me to display the formula. Please mute your microphone if you are not speaking. So Ronnie, there is the formula. So is there a question?
Done.
Yes, is there somebody asking a question? Okay, let's proceed. So in the next column here, region, we want to apply the same principles, but rather writing the formula down again, we can drag the formula across from district column to the region column. So before we do that, we have to look at our formula here and see if there is any anchoring that we need to do. And by anchoring, I mean to absolute reference. Okay, so to update our formula, we have to put a $sign here just before C2. And now we can drag our formula across. And since we want to return the district, the region, we have to change our column index to 3 and hit enter. Sorry, let me undo that. Since we want to return the district, return the column index 3 and hit enter. And we see we have returned the region north. Is there a question before I drag down the formula? Joseph, ask a question. Alvin, ask a question if you have. Priska, Stella, Ronnie can ask a question. And now we can drag down our formula and it populates. Again, there's an NA error because column store F is not in our lookup table. Is there any question about the VLOOKUP? So I'll just repeat what I've done in our region. So we want to drag our formula, VLOOKUP formula across because we don't want to go through the hassle of typing again the formula. And before we do that, we have to add a reference. We have to update our reference on this lookup value here. And we'll just add a $sign just before C2. Just before C2. Now we can drag our formula. And since we want to return the region, we have to update our column index to match the column index of region in our lookup table. And the column index we want to return is 3. Press enter and returns north. And now we can drag our formula down. So is that clear? So the formula is here, Eric. Or you can unmute your microphone to ask your question. You can unmute your microphone to ask a question before we move to errors. So Eric, are you okay? Stella, are you okay? Eugene?
Yes, I'm okay.
Ronnie, are you following up?
Yes, I'm okay.
Okay, so we can move on to errors and how we can deal with this NA error right here. So we can move to the next. Everybody should hit on the error sheet so that we can deal with the errors. So as we have been going through this example, we have come across a type of error where we are not receiving a match, and this returns a not available error, this one here. And just because we are analysts and we will be representing reports to people, we cannot allow our reports to have this NA error. This error has to communicate a message, And to do that, we can use the if NA error. And I will demonstrate right here. Just before the VLOOKUP, we can input our if NA. So, and the if NA function says that if there is an NA error in our VLOOKUP, we should return, for a district we should return unknown district, and close the parenthesis and hit enter. I'll expand this column here, and you see it has brought an unknown district here. Are we together, class? Joseph, have you seen how we can update the NA error that you are getting using the if NA function?
Repeat, please.
Okay. So to update this hash NA error here to display a message, we can use the if NA function. And to input it, we'll go here to our formula bar. Just before we start our VLOOKUP, that's where we input our if NA. So, and this function says that if there is an NA error in our VLOOKUP, type a comma, we should return unknown. We should return unknown district. And I will close the formula and hit enter, and it brings unknown district. Once again, I will demonstrate it with the region column so that you can get the concept. So we'll input the if NA function here just before our lookup or VLOOKUP function. And for our district, or for our region, sorry, if there's a NA error in our VLOOKUP function, we should return unknown region. Close the formula down, and our formula updates. So is that clear, everyone? Is that clear? Can I ask a question? Joseph, is that clear? You can unmute your microphone and ask a question. So let's proceed. So while doing our analysis, we can get different type of errors and error messages. As we have seen here, using our VLOOKUP returns an NA error. So another type of error that you can come across while analyzing our data is dividing with the zero error, and I want to demonstrate it here at our price column. So I want to type a formula here. I want to divide our profit with our volume, and the division symbol in Excel is the backslash. We hit enter, and now we drag our formula down, and we can see there is another error here, division by zero error. Are we together? Alvin, unmute your microphone and ask. If it is if your formula has brought a name error, is because there's a typo somewhere with your formula. So check it, correct it. It has to bring an NA error when you are using the VLOOKUP. So is there a question? Up to there, is everybody following up? Up to where we have brought the divide by zero error. So if we try to use the if NA error with this error right here, we just test it. You can use the if NA, say comma, to return incorrect volume. We close our formula down, press enter. So the if NA does not work. This is because the if NA only works when you are using the lookup function. The function that will work with this divide by zero error is the if error function. So if I update my function here to if error and press enter, you see our formula updates. Are we together, class?
Pardon.
I'll undo that. So the error we have encountered here when we are dividing the profit with the volume is a divide by zero error. If I try using the if NA error, it does not work as I've shown, and when I click on it, it does not work. The function that works is the if error function, and I will update it here. So when I press enter, it updates and brings the incorrect volume. Are we together up to there? Are we together? Joseph, are we together?
Yes.
Yes. Alvin, Priska, are you together? Ronnie, I hope we are in the same tab.
You're together.
Okay. And that is the content we had for today. So we looked at how to transform text to columns, how to concat, how to use the trim function, how to substitute values using the len, the left, the right, and the mid function. We have also looked up how to use the VLOOKUP function to look up data, and also how to update the errors that you have come across using the VLOOKUP and when you are computing a value. So that was that for today's class. If you have a question before we close up, you can ask before we conclude, or any comment that you have, you can unmute your microphone and ask.
Okay, I have a question.
Okay.
The way you've said about VLOOKUP, can also can HLOOKUP be used the same as VLOOKUP?
So VLOOKUP stands for vertical lookup, and HLOOKUP stands for horizontal. So both they will look up data, but the functionality is not the same. And a part of your assignment on Friday will be how to use horizontal lookup. So you can just look up on it. I'll place an assignment on how to use the VLOOKUP, and I want the class to do some research to see how you can use the VLOOKUP to look up some data. Is there another question?
Excuse.
Yeah.
Please repeat the formula for trim.
Oh, the formula for trim.
Yes, I was left. So after I do the trim, I'll do the substitution and lens left, right, those ones.
Okay, so the trim formula
Mhm.
is used to remove trailing white spaces in our data. So to input it, just to demonstrate it, I'll just use it here. Let me zoom. So you just put is equals, right trim, open the parenthesis, and we wanted to trim this row, this column here. So close the parenthesis and hit enter and drag your formula down, and that will remove the trailing spaces in our data. Is that clear?
Okay, thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Is there another question? Is there another question? Joseph, do you have a question?
No, I'm okay.
Stella, do you have a question? Is there another question? You can please ask. Amos, you have a question, please. The floor is yours. Just unmute and ask a question. The part where I was saying to drag the formula across, it is just to avoid rewriting the formula once again. It is just a shortcut. Eugene, you're asking how the name error occurs. The name error occurs when you have a typo in your formula. It will bring a name error. Is there any other question? So yeah, that was that for today. We'll share the recording for today's class, and please review what we have discussed today, and so that the concept can stick with us. So thank you. I will end the class. So further question, please ask on the WhatsApp group and I'll be answering. So thank you. I'll drop the call. Let's meet here tomorrow, same time, as early as 6:20. So bye bye.